I'm recording now, Dennis.
I know.
Okay, I'm recording, and now I can say my little spiel again. Thank you for coming back to the 2020 SARA conference, first virtual live. And a couple of things. We do have 4 items left in the raffles, and we'll be getting to the raffle items in the first break. We'll get 2 of those, and then 2 of them in the evening. Please stay on mute. Put your questions in chat. Feel free to chat privately between each other all day long. Save the group chats a little bit. I mean, you guys have been very good on the group chats, but save a lot of those for the questions, and don't be afraid to applause in the group chat or give the speaker attaboys in the group chat. That's really I am saving the group chats, so we'll be able to show those if we need to people. Voting's been done. I guess they've Bruce tabulated that. He'll report that in a few minutes. Let's see. Drake's Lounge was great last night. I think if I would have kept going, everybody would have been in the Drake's Lounge for another 2 hours. They just didn't want to quit. And Ken has got a virtual Drake's Lounge behind him. I think he brought the wine and cheese or whatever is behind him. So look at Ken's picture. And let's see. Okay. All right, and proceedings. Don't forget the proceedings is on a URL. Gary Memory is online, so you guys give him attaboys for that the nice proceedings setup we've got, or the way that looked. Okay. All right. Can I turn this over to Ken and the board? You guys give board results?
Oh, there we go. Yes. And Bruce has graciously put together a PowerPoint presentation, and we'll just use that as sort of like an outline to follow, if we could, please. So you want to let Bruce, you ready to share that?
Go ahead and share, Bruce. You should be able to.
Okay, I unmuted. Can people hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, good. I need to go to share screen. Okay, why doesn't that want to open up for me?
Because you just had it open. There we go.
Okay, does everybody see our PowerPoint there with SARA 2020 board?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so talk about that a little bit there. Board of Director meeting, of course, was done on Zoom, and quorum was present, so we were able to vote on things.
Bruce, hit F5.
There we go. That ought to go. All right. There. Okay, so VP report, we had a request from TerraSem Foundation for some help on technical aspects of communications, and they apparently make a file on person's life and broadcast it into space. They had some misconceptions about how radio communications works, and so Rich worked out the real physics of what it takes for radio communications across interstellar distances and all that. And apparently they're wanting to offer, they like SARA's education programs on our website and have offered some possible support for us. So Rich is working on that one. Okay, then in the VP report also we have 14 presentations on our conference, 263 pages of very good proceedings, Drake Lounge at night, all moderated by Rich Russell and Dennis Farr. Treasurer's report. The short form here, we have $64,381 in assets there in some sense or whatever, but anyway, membership, we're at 367 members, 81 were due for renewal and renewed last year, 22 new members, 2 new life members, and a loss of 90 members that didn't renew. And then a big event at the meeting was Dennis Farr has resigned as treasurer to take office as president. he will continue to support the treasurer position until it's filled. However, someone is needed. Apply with Dennis, please.
Bruce?
Yes.
And I wanted to mention one thing too, is Dennis has put together some tutorial videos so that for anybody that has concerns, it's documented. So that was a great thing for Dennis to do for us, make that, it simplifies at least the training aspect. So just wanted to mention that.
Okay, good. So, okay, so term limits of officers came up. That was a motion by Dennis, and you know, we had a lot of discussion for about 15 minutes, and you know, motion was withdrawn, not because it's a bad idea, but because the details need to be kind of worked out on that. And we weren't going to drag the meeting on forever there. So at a later date, you know, next BOD meeting, which we have a couple of year via teleconference, that'll be studied and addressed and figuring out how to work that. Okay, we also have an interesting issue come up of a director versus director at large. That it used to be that director was somebody that could actually come to the meeting at Green Bank, and director at large was someone who could not make it to the meeting, but would be a director representing you know, places like you know, outer Mongolia or South America or Alaska or wherever else we have you know, members with a real interest in the organization and obviously can't easily make the meeting in Green Bank. So those are directors at large. But now that the meetings are done on Zoom, and you know, so that needs to be discussed at a later date how we're going to handle it. But you know, those do need to be more the same. And will we just set it down to a group of 8 directors rather than 4 and 4, or what? So anyway, that will be discussed in our next meeting also. Okay, the other thing, big event there. Tom Crowley has given considerable support to SARA over the last probably 25, 30 years, something like that. It's been quite a while. And BOD voted to make Tom an honorary life member with dues paid by SARA forever and ever. So congratulations, Tom. We really appreciate all he's done at the organization. He's been in every officer position imaginable and done a great job of it. And you know, he's now running our you know, group for you know, email group there. And he's been very effective. The group has been free of spam. Somebody brings politics in it, or you get a nasty thing about you know, how waveguides work and an argument gets too heated. He always cools things down, sets people straight. So the iron fist of Crowley has been really great on the email group. So we really appreciate him. So congratulations to Tom. You know, hopefully he's in here now and you know, hearing this. But anyway, you know, the big thing was the dues. I don't think are a real financial hit for him, but the big thing is that you know, we're recognizing all he's done for us for the last 30 years. So very much appreciated, Tom. Thank you. Okay, next issue, little bighorn antenna. That's a historic site, and this is an earlier picture of it before it got all overgrown. This area here is all trees, and a couple of the plywood panels here had rotted out. And about 1991, 92, somewhere in there, somebody actually went inside that building, pulled the waveguide fitting off, dumped all the water out of it, probably 10 gallons of water or something came pouring out, cleaned it all up, put it back together and hooked it to a receiver, and actually observed Cassiopeia A going through there once a day. And this is a historic calibration thing because back in the days when that was built in 1967, people didn't have much in the way of computer power, and knowing the exact effective area of an antenna was difficult. Well, if you had a tape measure and a slide rule for a long horn, you could calculate the effective area of it, you know, quite accurately with a reasonable amount of effort. So that's why it was made that dimension. Whereas a dish antenna, you always wonder what's the illumination factor, does the feed horn fit perfectly with the dish, and that kind of stuff. So this was the only way you could get an accurately known collecting area. So that was and it was surveyors and everything carefully put it in so that Cassiopeia went exactly through the center of the beam once a day. Cass A, the supernova remnant there, and that way they could report what the true number of Janskis was for Class A, and other people could calibrate their dishes and other antennas against that. So that was the idea of it, and it was used for quite a few years, and it fell out of use and much disrepair. But there's talk about restoring it as a historic site, and we're actually hoping the waveguide feed will be fixed up so that we can, tack our own, receiver in it at some time and do a demo with it. Who knows if that'll go? But anyway, SARA Grant Committee is going to review this, but we're considering on the order of $5,000 worth of help on that out of SARA assets. And you saw that we have a fair amount in our piggy bank now, so that wouldn't be too painful. And like I said, it's an especially big historic thing. So, I think we'd like to have our name attached to that. I think I probably said enough about, Little Bighorn there. But anyway, so like I said, Grant Committee is reviewing that, and we'll hear later on it. Okay, meeting adjourned at 7:10 Eastern Daylight Time for an hour and 10 minutes of meeting there, which I hopefully shortened to the high points a little quicker. And election results. The call for nominations was in the March-April 2020 journal, and we didn't do any other call like we've done in the past. That was the official call. All ballots were done by email, and sorry about the confusion. For next year, because part of the confusion was the emails were sent by Dennis, but yet they came to me, and the rerouting thing had some problems. The ballot thing didn't make it. So there was about a dozen of them that were a real mess, and I emailed back and forth and finally got straightened out mostly. But anyway, next year, I think we have to have, secretary sends the email ballots, and then all somebody needs to do is reply to the email, scroll it down to the ballot, check off their choice to do their write-ins, hit send, and they're done, and it'll come back to me and it's done. So that will make it considerably simpler for next year, because like I said, it had its share of confusion on that. A lot of people had some frustration besides me with it. So anyway, next year, the same person that processes them has to send them out. So then just hitting a reply will do it, not having to send back to some funny address or anything like that. So anyway, that will be much better next year. I learned a lot from it. Sorry about everybody's the confusion I caused. Election results. We have 59 people voted. Dennis Farr had 54 votes. There were a couple of people that actually sent in a ballot that was blank, and they said that was intentionally blank because they didn't know anybody. They wanted to show participation, but didn't really know any of these people, and said, just trust the board to pick the right people. Okay, so Dennis had 54. There were a couple of write-ins for president. Rich had 57. Ed had 57. Steve Zickas had 55. David Westman, Keith 55. Keith Pay, I can't never pronounce his name right, but anyway, 54. We had some sort of okay. Payday, Keith Payday. Sometimes it's called that teasingly because it's easier to pronounce. But anyway, we had a few assorted write-ins that were, people either we emailed them and they refused to have anything to do with it, or whatever. So we really don't have any effective write-ins to consider there. Okay, well, Tom Hagen was one of the ones that was a write-in for treasurer, and he promptly refused it because he's treasurer of another organization and burned out over that already. It's some astronomical society in Michigan. So he's doing a big job with that, and he's done a big job with things he's done in the past here. So he probably deserves a rest. But anyway, he had suggested the idea that SARA, should have capitalized it all, but anyway, goes and hires a bookkeeper to do the treasurer's work, and the elected treasurer only certifies and supervises work. May make it a smaller, task there. Somebody to make sure that whatever bills are paid, come up are paid, and things like preparing the stuff for the, keeping the email list and all that kind of thing. So that could simplify it. So, something we probably want to talk about at the next, board meeting. Do we want to possibly consider hiring an assistant to the treasurer? Because it's the really big work job of any organization. And I know from having been in another, or well, still am in another organization, it will run you crazy. So, having a helper could be, good. So anyway, that will be pursued later. And that's it. So Ken, it's back to you. How do let's see, I need to unshare. Okay, how do I unshare here?
Put your arrow at the top of the page and you should see unshare.
Arrow at the top of the page. I'm
higher, 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 higher.
Right, there you go.
You unshared me? Good, thank you.
We'd have two questions from the floor here on the group chat. Was the Little Bighorn built in 57 or 67? And that's from Tom Hagen and Gary Memory. Is there a list of things need to be done if I were to go down to Green Bank and pitch in to do work? Is there a list of things the person could do, clear weeds, etc.?
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ken. You handle that.
What I was going to say first of all is that the COVID scare. So I got a feeling I would want to be sensitive to that. But if you're going to the Little Bighorn, I would say there's, that's a pretty safe area. You don't have to worry about being in close proximity to anybody. But we would probably just need to reach out to the site manager, just so he's aware. Skip, can you maybe help us find out?
Yeah, I was
Sorry,
just looking. I was just looking for my book, but it was fun by Jay Lockman and a few others over in my bookshelf while the question was being asked. So
Well, what the question is, Skip, is Gary Memory was asking if someone wanted to go to the Little Bighorn and help clear out the weeds.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I thought it was the first. I thought it was Tom's question on the 5767 thing. So I ran off to get the book.
Well, I jumped. Oh, sorry, I jumped right to Gary.
Then the second question, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going there for quite a while. The other thing is it's basically closed.
There's nobody even in the offices there at all?
Almost no one. All of the Jansky lab is closed. Well, I was in contact about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. Yeah. And all of the employees of the Jansky lab are at home. And
okay.
And the place is locked. In fact, people can't even get in to access their own work.
I have the same problem too at my office.
Yeah, and then I noticed on Google Maps that if you click on the GBT, it says temporarily closed.
Huh. Okay. Oh well, unfortunately, Gary, that is.
I think we have to have a point of contact, and it's their place. We're only offering to support the thing, and we have to have a point of contact. So this may have to wait until, they start going to work every day again.
Yeah. I think that's the key is that it's, the observatory is, and I also heard from someone else, I heard from Andrew Simeon that it's on a skeleton crew, and they may not even be observing all the time with GBT. I don't know. That's really the requirement, is to have one operator, and they may be down to that, or maybe not even that. And then there's the question of maintenance. They can't do maintenance. Right. But on the other question of weeds, so I have to admit that I've been going there for 5 years, and I have never been to the Little Bighorn. And I think the reason that I haven't been is because I never tried to come in from the other side. I tried to cross over from the 40-foot, and I ended up going down into the gully down there and hearing all kinds of strange sounds in the woods and all that. And then I decided that, I don't have a cell phone. This would be kind of stupid to be down here alone.
Well, Skip,
I could not find it. I was right where it should be, and I could not find it. So I think it's undergrown at the bottom badly, if anybody's been there recently. Oh, you have? Okay, so you got a better answer than I do.
Well, that's why my picture, you noticed my background picture yesterday was of the Little Bighorn in front of it.
At the top.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, the top. And we've actually, if you come in from the side, we actually did it with a car and we got in. So, I mean, it's still, it is difficult. I don't argue, but it is accessible. But I would want somebody at the facility to be aware before somebody would actually go down in there and start doing anything.
Oh, yeah.
As far as
yeah.
So that's just
Yeah, and you know, we do have to point out, and Karen O'Neill has explained this to me, because when I first arrived 5 years ago, well, six years ago, I was interested in trying to make the 85-foot dishes come back to life, you know, or at least one of them, even in transit, you know, just park it. And she said that, you know, as soon as you start doing anything around the dishes and the old things, all sorts of issues like fluids and hydraulics and mechanicals and safety and other things come in, and then it involves a lot of people at the site who are paid, and then it ends up getting into their budgets and et cetera. So she said that the money can escalate pretty quickly with almost any project on the old telescopes.
Okay, we got a couple, and by the way, everybody should sort of have their chat window up. There's a lot of good comments coming in through chat, and Ken and Bruce and I guess me now since I'm elected. But anyway, John McCullough had some good notes on some ideas on the next year's election and web conference voting procedures. It appears that people are a little frustrated this year on the voting approach, but I think we need to clean that up, and we all agree. Don would like to volunteer to help the Little Bighorn, and Donna Halen would like to address the bylaws about nominations from the floor at meetings. And I'll pitch into this. One of the problems is the bylaws says you're going to nominate a couple of weeks ahead, and then we have nominations at the meetings, which sort of invalidates the original nominations and the votes that were already submitted. So I'd like to get rid of the nominations from the meetings, because we already have nominations weeks ahead, and we already have a ballot that's already been submitted, sent to everybody. So having another set of nominations during the meetings is like, well, what if somebody does get nominated, now they're not on the ballot, and people who submitted their ballots don't have, you know, sort of disenfranchised. So we need to clean all that up, I think.
I think another thing that we're going to do is look at having a nomination committee that will meet, you know, at least a month before, and actually, you know, put some names down, rather, because it's essentially been, yeah, this is the way we've always done it, and, you know, somebody will pop up and one thing. But I think it would, now that we have this Zoom thing going on, I believe we should look at having a committee.
Well, in the past, Dennis, we've always, there were certain dates that you had to have your list of people, and we would solicit in the journal, we would solicit for people to submit names, and it usually met with a dull yawn. I mean, it you know, we had to hit those dates, and then we wouldn't get a lot of input. And a lot of times it would just fall back on whoever was holding the office. So I like the idea of a committee to push a little harder. So.
Okay, I also got is nominating committee is this is also from Donna. Is a good idea. How are we going to fill the 2 vacancies that exist now? Also, when do the newly elected officers take assume their office?
Usually it's at this event at the Green Bank. That's usually where you switch from the old to the new for those that were up for election.
So right now that you announced it, we are now officially the officers?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're saying?
For the most part. Go ahead.
You and Dennis have to do a high five remotely or something. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's see. It says, checked on the Green Bank website. Little Bighorn was built in '67.
Actually, I have a picture here showing it under construction in '59.
Oh, there's debate here, huh?
Well, there's the picture where it's, I think you can see it there.
Yes, we can see it.
And it's part of it is on a crane, And the date on the
Yes.
photograph down below is 59.
Oh, so the website might be wrong. That's causing the confusion.
And
It
this
looks
is-
like a large
and
clock.
This is Jay's book, you know, his big book on, but it was fun at the, you know, Jay Lockman and Frank Ego
Yes,
and Mr. Balzer. And here's the thing, it turned out it was finished in just a couple of years because they were measuring it they were measuring with it in 1959, October, and that construction picture was taken in February 59. So yeah, it was pretty quickly built in 59.
Okay. I've also got one from Alina, which I think is very appropriate. Second Donna's concern about unified unfilled positions, especially with no women on the slate this year. I'm perfect. I think that there is no problem from any of the guys to have women on the slate. If somebody wants to volunteer, I think we could probably get you on the slate very rapidly.
Want to be treasurer?
Yeah. Dennis will jump up and down and say, yes, yes.
Wasn't
I
Melinda?
think,
Nomination for treasurer.
Yeah, wasn't Melinda the treasurer for a while too? So we have had not many. I agree. We need to have more. But
all right, and I got Tom and everybody else saying yes. You are now the new officers, let's see. So, and if we do do this remotely, we're going to have to change the bylaws because I think for having these annual meetings online.
Well, I'd like to comment on that in my mind, our objective will always be to meet at Green Bank, all things being considered.
yes,
Right.
very much
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think that's but I think we'll meet at Green Bank and have this online conference simultaneously.
Yeah.
We'll just be doing it at Green Bank. I mean, the main team will be at Green Bank, and
Agreed.
hopefully as many participants as can show up.
Agreed.
Yeah, the beauty of that would be though that if anybody has to miss, they can still participate. So yeah.
Right, and I think that's actually the Western Conference. David Westman's on. I think that's his plan for this next Western Conference. Is that right, David?
Yes, although my plans are extremely embryonic at this point, but certainly if the VLA does not agree to host a conference there next year, and I fully expect that to happen actually, then it will be a one-day virtual conference in March. That's as far as I've gone with the idea.
Okay.
But I would, if by some crazy miracle, the COVID crisis subsides greatly by next March, I would hope to hold a in-person conference at the DLA, but I doubt that will happen.
Okay.
But just one other quick point on the, you know, because there's always talk about the closure issue, you know, the risk that the observatory will be closed down due to NSF issues and they had to divest, et cetera. So when the NSF was out a couple of years ago with their public hearing and a couple thousand, well, maybe 1,000 people showed up at 2 of the meetings, a lot of people got up and spoke, and I spoke about the importance of having an observatory that amateurs can go to, educators, students can go to, and when you don't have that, you lose the benefit, and it's all free. It's all, taxpayers aren't paying us, you know. So I explained to the NSF in my chance to get up and talk in front of everybody that you don't want to take away things like this. So our support for the Green Bank Observatory, in my opinion, any amateur activities that go on there are important because they're important to the nation.
Yeah.
Right. I got Alina. Why don't you come on, get off mute and explain. You're talking about monitoring relevant matters in Capitol Hill and the FCC. Just to explain what you're thinking about.
All right, am I on audio now?
I hear you.
Okay, I live in Metro DC, and so I'm maybe more attuned to this than some, but we have Space Directive 3 out of the White House, signed in 2018, still pending. And that is going to, if it's not enacted, but if it's actually put into place, it's going to move functions from the FAA to the FCC for overall allocation of more interest groups and a different procedure for changing the RF spectrum, the allocations. And that's the one that I'm most concerned about. But I was just wondering if we have anybody in SARA who is deputized or authorized or named by the board to keep an eye on the Hill and the agencies.
Didn't really know about that. Rich, do you?
Don't know anything about it.
Well, I've been in contact with the, quite often with the interference groups that are associated both at NRAO and at Green Bank Observatory. Carla Boudreau, for example, she's constantly in touch with anything involving frequency allocations and rules. So I could check with her and find out, I'm sure she's very aware of any risks to the spectrum. Well, she talks about it a lot, she gets up at meetings, big symposia, and talks about the importance of that.
Okay, well,
This is Paul Oxley. I got a comment on that. When I worked for AT&T before I retired, the part of my job and a whole group of people was just that, keeping track of FCC and what they were ruling on. And that is a full-time job almost. You got to keep track of what's being proposed and how it's going into different hearings and object or accept at the right time. So it's we should have a voice, but it's a big job.
Yep.
I'll get off. That was my son wishing me a happy birthday.
All right.
well, Dennis, maybe we could discuss this offline, but it sounds like it couldn't be a position, but maybe just to be aware of what's going on and, at least track which I'm sure is quite massive, the documentation for the proposals. But
Yeah,
is it
you
more
just got to get on the distribution from the FCC and you'll have your hands full of documentation.
Yes, you will. No doubt, Paul. All right. Well, I'll make a note.
Well, is there somebody at the VLA or the NRAO there's probably somebody there that's their job, and we can line up with them and say, if you need some support from a volunteer group, we'll come in and do that. So my guess is they've already got somebody. They're all worried about it too. They just need maybe some backup.
Yeah, Carla's got the job, and then I believe his name is Harvey. Don't quote me on that, but I've met and spoken with the man at Charlottesville who's responsible.
Oh, okay.
This could all change, but they
Right.
are, and they're 100%. Well, no, Harvey isn't, but Carla, well, she also has other jobs. She's an engineer and she designs instruments. So there's more, she does more than just interference. It is a huge job. As Paul said, it's huge.
Well, I don't know if, Elena, you sound like you are very up on this stuff, and maybe we can hook you up with the NRAO lady who's doing that Skip mentioned. And then at least you could talk the language. And we'll back up, Sarah will back up the, trying to fight this or fight all these 5G guys. Okay.
Does that address it or we kick it off? Kind of nebulous, but yeah, we got to get our arms around it first, probably do a little requirements gathering or try to figure out, what are the issues.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll volunteer if somebody wants to frame a statement of concern. I could forward it to Carla Boudreau.
Okay. Are you good with that, Dennis?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
If anyone has a statement of the concern and sort of a summary of what's going on. And I'd be happy to forward it to Carla, and she could inform us, where it's going to go. I'm sure that there's probably a list of organizations that someone is keeping, and we probably want to get on that list.
I don't know, Elena, is that something you could at least put a draft together, and we can help you beef it up? Or oh, she jumped off. It was no.
Is
there you
this
go.
something that might be
Okay,
looped
she
in
said
through
yes.
Well,
I could from Elena. I can work on it. Who else is in the town? Is in town in DC? Anybody else online that's in DC? Can work with Elena.
Zekas? No.
All right.
That's not my expertise area.
But you're in DC? No.
Well,
Virginia.
I'm not in DC. I'm in Colorado Springs. You can email it to me, and I will I'll forward it to as many people as I can who I think can help you out on that, and we'll help work it in. Alice says she's in DC. I work in DC. Alice Kottmeyer.
Yeah,
Alice,
I work in DC. I actually have. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Let me put my thing on here. Yeah, I work in DC. I'm a total noob at SARA and what you guys look at, but I do work in DC. I work for the State Department.
That's close enough to FCC and FAA. I don't know. You want to get with Elena, and you probably know all this.
Jim McBride here. I have one little bit to add. I've been dealing with the local city that has tried to shut me down on several occasions, being driven by people in the local optical astronomy club. At some point, I'm going to document all this and how to handle it. Just had another go around the last several weeks. They installed something in a park that was producing interference. Didn't want to turn it off, and we got it turned off or fixed. So whoever does this, would like to know a horror story, I have it for you.
Okay.
Would it be wise to loop the ARRL into this as well?
Oh, the ARRL was into it. As a matter of fact, I just talked to them, finishing up on it.
I'm talking about the other concerns.
Oh, I'll let you address that.
Yeah, they probably. I mean, they probably radio astronomy and them are probably closely tied, and with all this stuff going on, it's they definitely are working the same type of approach, maybe different frequencies. But okay, so here's what I'll do. I'll take on we'll sort of pull together a little subcommittee and sort of draft something. And have Skip and Elena and Alice and I forget Mr. Pruin. I forget your first name. Sorry.
Rich,
and
could you include me in this also?
Who's that?
Dave Westman.
Hi, David. Sure.
And tag Ethan Waldo.
Okay.
Are you taking notes on that, Rich? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, I just started.
Yeah, I noticed you reached for your pen there.
Yeah. I didn't realize that I'd get all this great response here. So that was a little unexpected. So I didn't get my notes out yet. So all right.
I just keep Notepad open on my screen so I can try to quickly type stuff in.
Okay.
Because I can't read my writing. I didn't take a note on that.
Yeah.
I've been scratching too.
Okay. So I got David, Elena, Skip, Alice, and James. And did I miss anybody?
Yeah, Ethan.
Ethan. So this is we're gonna basically it's a little subcommittee on what do you think, Elena? Is that what do we call it? Is it just 5G, or is it the whole general category of allocations?
Well, as I remember, and it's been a long time since I've been in that, but it's the proceedings of the new technology area or whatever is a more general term for it. Did I say that right? Anybody that knows?
Yeah, it's the 5G and probably the all the SpaceX satellites
Yeah, but
too.
it's the committee that it's involved is much broader than 5G. It's
okay.
like emerging technologies is a general category.
Okay. Yeah, that's what Elena says. We get squeezed from several other interests too. So,
Yeah.
okay. So it sounds like we sort of need this committee is going to have more than one. We're basically start tackling some of the hot spots and then sort of keeping an eye on it overall. Let's do that. And we'll come up with a cool name and stuff like that. And we'll be the cool subcommittee. And, you all want to join us, but, we'll be selective. But there you go. Okay. I think that's great. I think that's great. Elena, you've really started something here. So hopefully we get going. And you guys got all my information. Why don't you guys all email me and remind me that you wanted to join. And NSF NRAO contact Tom. Is that I think Skip knows that name.
I want to do one more thing on the last subject. Wolfgang just joined, and it reminded me that there's also a link to the international group through that. So we don't want to lose sight of that the international IRC, I guess it is, I don't know if that's the right word, but it's where all of the technical discussion of radio allocation occurs throughout the world.
Elena says it's the ITU.
Right.
All right. Yeah, well, that's there's a radio subset of that, which I think is IRC or IRU or something.
Well, if I just quickly may add to that, it's indeed so that the national regulators like the FCC, they have a very national view, and SpaceX is a good example for that because there's some spectrum overlapping between the SpaceX satellites and radio astronomy, and the FCC has ruled that they need to reduce power or switch it off over radio astronomy sites, but they've only listed US sites. So especially for the spacecraft, which really circle around the world, it has to be an international consideration rather than a national consideration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see, John McCullough, Jay Wilson suggested the RFI mitigation committee. Is that committee in where, Congress, or what committee? Where's that at? Anyway, okay, so the official subcommittee on this will take it up. Oh, I'm saying you're saying that's the name we should call it. Okay, say the SARA subcommittee should be the RFI mitigation committee. All right, well, we'll take that under consideration.
Can I make a comment here?
Yes, go ahead.
Right, I both attend the meetings of the Space Education Board and various online meetings of the AAS. And in both cases in the last 2 months, there have been significant presentations made by members of the professional radio science, radio astronomy professionals to both groups, talking about RFI problems. So we might find ourselves a little bit behind the curve here. And should be aware that the professionals are really weighing in on this. And the general message that they're giving is that they have a lot of experience in dealing with government and that the optical astronomy community needs to learn from them as to how to deal with problems that SpaceX and similar companies are presenting. So you may want to consider making, contacting the AAS and seeing who in the professional community has been talking to them and making presentations. I just don't want us to be embarrassed.
Oh, no, I think that the first thing we'll do is we'll basically start learning and see and reach out and ask questions, not present stuff yet, because I agree with you. I think that the big guys should have already weighed in on this, and we're just sort of this is something we need to know about, but if we get an opportunity, we can we can voice. Let's see. Thanks, Blair. Okay, we're out of time. Anybody have last things from the officers? Ken, Dennis, or Bruce? Ken, you're outgoing, so I want to, from everybody, I want to thank you very much for your years as president.
Well, thank you. I'm not going away. I still got Tracy.
You're now an emeritus, or I can't ever pronounce that. Emeritus. You're the old president right now.
The guy going out. Yeah.
All right. So okay, I am going to shift gears and introduce our next speaker, Steve Zikas. Our next, let's see, he's been a SARA member since 2013. He is an engineer and currently on the SARA board of directors. Steve set up the SARA sections a few years ago and provides a short annual update on these sections. Okay, Steve, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Rich. This will be a short update. It's about 15 minutes, so hopefully we'll still be on track. I think what I'm going to do is go to the SARA section website and then go to the PowerPoint. I think that's easier. So let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see this? It should be right on the SARA webpage.
Yes.
Okay, and you can see the pointer too, right?
Move it around. Let me see. Yep, I see it. Okay,
great. So this is where I'll start. So the SARA sections is a update I give every Monday morning of the summer conference, and it's primarily intended for new participants to help them navigate the website and find items of interest easier. Every year we get a sizable audience. That's first-time attendees. When I joined SARA in 2013, I was one of them, and at the time, SARA had a pretty comprehensive website, but it wasn't organized like other amateur and professional organizations, specifically by having sections or divisions that focus member interests, volunteering, and projects. So I offered to create the sections by adding them to the SARA website rather than reorganizing any existing materials. So that was a volunteer effort. I didn't mind doing it because it was a great learning experience. I'll navigate you through that and a couple other things on the website. The top ribbon, if you go to the right, you'll see the sections. And in addition to the introductions, there's 6 sections. And those 6 sections cover every aspect of radio astronomy. So you can, if you have a particular interest, you can go into them. I'll start off with the introduction. When we first put the SARA sections on the website, we got some initial feedback that people thought it would be great to have an introduction. And in the introduction, to have a beginners tab. So if you're new, go to that introduction page, scroll down a bit, and find information for beginners. And here is some great information for you to start out in radio astronomy. Going into the individual sections, they have a similar format. Every section at the top has its section coordinator. So I'm the coordinator for the analytical section. And then it's populated with topics that relate to the particular section. The ones that I like to populate every year is since I work a lot with the 20-meter dish, and I've been learning it. Those are my learning projects every year. I try to learn some new aspect of 20-meter dish every year. So this year in yesterday's demo, I learned about pulsars and presented that information as part of the demo. So that presentation's here. It'll remain there. The update slides I'm going to have for the section are here too. Last year and the few years before that, I was interested in variable radio objects. And so the SARA membership in one of our discussions with the prior demo suggested that Cassiopeia A would be the best variable object. So that's what we adopted. We found a paper by Dr. Reichart on it. He used the 20 meter as well as the 40-foot telescope at Green Bank. And using that, I put a presentation together on observing it and obtaining a flux value. So those are, I think, items of interest there. And if you're signing up for the 20-meter scope, if you're a US citizen and want to sign up, we already had 2 people signed up yesterday. I sent them their passwords. There's some information in these demos that would be useful. Another aspect of all the sections, if you scroll down to the bottom, this was feedback we got originally for the sections. Some members wanted to see radio astronomy awards. And fortunately, they exist already. And the Astronomical League has a number of optical observing programs, but among the optical are radio observing programs. So if you go to their website, not only do you see all the other observing programs on the margin, but here's the radio observing. And this is great. If you're new to radio astronomy, they have a bronze, silver, and gold. This is a great methodology to follow and become somewhat proficient in radio astronomy. So when this came out, I went up straight to the gold, and it was a great learning experience. So I highly recommend that. This year, the Astronomical League added some new radio astronomy programs. It's under their program, the new program called Citizen Science. So there's a lot of citizen science programs already out there. They put them all under one umbrella. They give awards for about 100 observations or so, and included in there are some radio astronomy programs. So have a look at that. Another area for an award, it's basically licensed, but it's an achievement, are the FCC licenses. So a lot of ham operators know this already. There's a technician, there's a general, the amateur extra. Each one of these licenses has radio technology information in there that you have to pass a test before you get your license. And especially the amateur extra has a lot of radio technology. So going through these, they're all free to take the test. It's a great way to learn radio technology for application into radio astronomy. So I would recommend them too. I went through them up to the amateur extra, and they were great learning experiences. Going on to the other sections, the solar system, the stellar and galactic have a similar format, so I'm not going to go into each one of them, but I'm going to click one because they have a feature that are not in the other sections, and I wanted to refer everyone to them. So if you scroll down to the bottom, you see something called a data template. So one of the things SARA members talked about years ago was creating our own citizen science program, and what would be the parts of it that we would need if we created a database. So we got together and created a template, and each of those 3 sections has a slightly different template. And these are living documents. We put the first protocol together for that. And the idea was if there is some sort of citizen science program, it'll be done on many different radio telescopes, some small radio telescopes, some large. And how do we take all this data and coherently put it in one spot for amateurs and professionals? So this database asks some questions: observing specifications, type of radio object, telescope specifications, experience level, methodology, recorded output, and then the last comments we have on these. So if somebody wants a volunteer project updating these templates, there's a lot of starter material here. And those templates led to the question then, well, what would we observe with a citizen science project? What changes in the radio frequency in the sky that amateurs could watch from month to month and year to year, and they can look at the progress. So that's where the Cassiopeia A program originated. That is a supernova remnant that is fading with time, and it's fading actually quite quickly over the decades. So those two things went together. One of the other sections, outreach. There's a lot of people in SARA who do outreach and like doing outreach. If you're promoting SARA, the main thing on this page is look at the outreach brochures towards the bottom of the page. There's 3 of them. They're meant to be printed back and front, and then you can fold them in 3 and have a trifold. So what they look like. An example, back and front and folded in 3. So they're great talking brochures. And there's one for the general membership, there's one for the Super Sid, and there's one for teachers, because we have a grant program, information for which can be found on the link right on top. So SARA does give grant money away to good projects. So I think this is information that is should be reviewed. And the last section, since radio astronomy is there's a lot of different radio telescopes. If you go to Green Bank, you have access to the 40-foot dish. There's a workshop there on the Sunday afternoon, and then through the rest of the week, that's available for use. I talked about the 20-meter telescope yesterday. We also have set up projects put together by SARA members, so you get to see a lot of different setups, Radio Jove and Super Sid, and some of the smaller software-defined radio. The RASLR is an interesting project, and sorry that acronym is misspelled, but Radio Astronomy Self-Defined Radio. That was put together by SARA members. It's a sort of universal receiver, and that's also tied into that Cassiopeia A observing program, because with this receiver, it's meant to be the universal receiver for a lot of amateurs. That's the goal, and if we can pick up a bright object with this, such as Cassiopeia A, that's a program that radio amateurs can look forward to and contribute. And then some of our other items here, and then some advanced ones to take a look at. Some of these are for cell, like the E-Callisto radio solar spectrometer network. These are all very interesting if you want some challenges in observing. I'm gonna take a look. So back at the top bar, I want to hit on 2 other important tabs. One is the education tab. And if you scroll down to the last link, education links.
I'm sorry to break in. Some people are not seeing the screen. Is everybody seeing the screen? I've got Ted says he can't see the screen. I'm seeing it. So if you're not seeing the screen, everybody seeing it? Okay. So Ted, I think it's
see myself flickering in the feedback. So maybe some people have to turn their videos off, like we did yesterday.
Okay. Okay, I'm seeing, yeah, so so Ted, try some settings and stuff for anybody. If you can't see it, he has been showing the screen for quite a while here. Okay,
Yeah, the
keep going.
Is on solid, but the people, the video images of the participants, some of them are flickering for me, so I don't know if that's the same for others.
I'm seeing your screen very clearly. So
okay.
Okay, keep going. I'm sorry to break in, but keep going.
All right. And so under the education, there is a very comprehensive link right at the top of that page, resources for beginners and not so beginners in no particular order. John Wallace put this, compiled this, and this is an even more comprehensive list of beginner links than what the SARA section introduction page has. So this is a must-see if you're new to radio astronomy, or even if you're not so new. Take a look at that. And the other tab on top of the ribbon I want to point out is the administrative tab. You go to management, and if you have any interest in SARA, whether you're an officer or director or just want to know about SARA, this is an excellent page. It's got all the board minutes there. It's got all the policies and mission statements. And so for as long as I've been director, I found this to be invaluable, and then sometimes when we were missing something, I've tried to contribute to this. So this is a really good page. I believe it's got even historical information in there that I helped compile to put that together. So this is a great page as well. I'm going to go now to my PowerPoint. That's going to recap everything. And I just want to make sure everybody can see that PowerPoint.
Not yet.
Not yet?
You have to unshare this one and then reshare your PowerPoint.
All right, let me try to do that.
Stephen, before you get too far, we had a comment from Kim, who lives in Canada, and she would like to know why use of the 20 meter is restricted to U.S. citizens. If you could.
That's the language in the National Science Foundation grant. So we had no choice. The citizenship is the key thing, but there's other things in there, such as you promise not to track man-made objects such as satellites. But we don't have any control over that. And that's a recent agreement. I think in a recent stipulation in the last couple of years. You might find some astronomy clubs that were set up their 20 meter program prior to 2 years ago. And apparently they don't have that stipulation. So the local astronomy club in my area, they have access to the 20 meter. There wasn't a requirement for that as far as I remember. And the Skynet, UNC, University of North Carolina, Skynet, University, they call it. It's online. You can take a class for the 20 meter. It's optical. I think it's radio too. It's free, but there's a $60 administration fee. You can go on to that, and they give you an account for at least the optical, maybe the radio too. And that's your personal account. I don't know if that has any restrictions on the radio part, but that's the reason why. We have to follow those rules. When we set up our account with Green Bank for this, they asked us to put a plan in place for that. So we follow that.
Okay. Steve, we're running a little late, but I'll give you 5 more minutes.
Okay, let me see. How do I stop share? Okay, and now I'm going to share it again. And hopefully my PowerPoint screen is going to come up this time.
Yep, see it.
Okay, I don't know why that did that. I was toggling on my desktop, but that didn't work. So, all right, everything in here I should have gone over. So let's just look at that. The agenda, purpose of the section, how it's organized, volunteering. There's a lot of stuff to do on the SARA website. And if you've got any learning experience, it's great to post that information because there are others who want to learn the same thing. Some of the information I posted on the analytical, including the 2019 and 2020 demos. Those new Astronomical League Citizen Science Awards in radio astronomy, that is Radio Galaxy Zoo, Radio Meteor Zoo, and Solar Storm Watch 2. And for some reason, well, this is a listing of different types of projects on the 20-meter radio dish. There's a hyperlink there. For some reason, it doesn't operate when I'm in Zoom, but it does with the actual, if you're not in Zoom and you do it from your desktop. So you don't need to go into the 20-meter account with a password to actually get access to some of the observations. You could click on links and see them there. But as I said, I can't, doesn't seem to work. Ah, it does. I stand corrected. Before I couldn't get that. But yeah, you can click a link and you can see I didn't need a password for anything to go in there. So that worked. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. And that's it. Here's my contact information. Again, if you want to join that 20-meter radio telescope dish and you want a password, contact me. I'm going to send you an email with language you agree to. Basically, you're saying U.S. citizen and you agree to the terms that I send you. And then I'll send you the username and password, and you'll be all set for that. And that brings me to the conclusion of the SARA section update for this year. Thank you. And I'm going to stop sharing. So, and if we have time to answer any more questions, I'll try to do that, but we have to get to the next item of business. I'll refer back to you, Rich.
So, okay, thank you. Just if you got any questions for Steve, go ahead and put them in the group chat or the private chat. Thank you very much, Steve. That was excellent. I learned a ton of stuff just by, I've never gone through that cleanly. Okay, our next speaker is Keith. Born in the beginning of the space race, fascinated by science early age, he went on to earn a bachelor's EE from Worcester Polytechnic Institute in 1979. Many years later, flyer on the wall at work introduced Keith to the Robert Ferguson Observatory in Kenwood, California. He quickly signed in as a docent and became very involved in the local amateur astronomy community. In parallel, he had discovered the online presence of SARA and the SETI League and joined both. For the last few years, his primary activity at the RFO has been to interpret radio astronomy for the visitors using a donated Radio Jove receiver in the context of general solar observing. A long-term goal is to have 24/7 remotely accessible radio observations at the RFO. Keith has been an attendee and sometimes presenter at 6 of the SARA Western Conferences and one of the Eastern Conferences. Since the spring of 2015, Keith and his wife, Nicolette, have been the distributors of the Super Sid system worldwide. Keith has been a SARA director at large for the last 4 years and looks forward to continuing that role if reelected. And just as a caveat, I've had my Super Sid that I got from Keith for about 5 years now, and I'm taking regular daily observations with that, and it's worked wonderfully. So great job. So Keith, go ahead.
Thanks for the introduction, Rich. Let me just get my screen going here. There we go. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my
I can see it.
Okay, so on the schedule, it says I'm going to talk about Super Sid, which I will at the end. This is a paper I put together for the Western Conference, and unfortunately, the cancellation of that happened too quickly, so we couldn't really put together an online version of that. So I'm going to talk about it now. And I also like to say thank you, everybody, for re-electing me this year. So the first part of my talk is going to be about building a custom space weather dashboard with a little twist. So let me just go to the next one here. Okay, so most mornings, as soon as I fire up my computer, I check spaceweather.com and the Noaa Space Weather Enthusiast Dashboard, which I'll talk about in a minute, just to review the latest space weather conditions. And then right after that, I go to XKCD to see what the latest comic is. But anyhow, I began exploring the area at the bottom of the space weather page on Noaa called Products and Data. And I found there's a bunch of stuff there. I think this is true of a lot of government organizations, right? They are required by their funding to share their data. So they have a bunch of stuff at the Noaa Space Weather Prediction Center. And then this got me thinking about making a custom dashboard so that I would not have to go to multiple sites to get this data all at once. So there you go. So this is spaceweather.com. Hopefully some of you have looked at this at least once in a while. It's produced by Tony Phillips over in Bishop, California, which is near the Owens Valley Radio Observatory. And he puts together this every day. It shows you how many sunspots there are, what the sunspot number is, how many days it's been, and general other things, especially aurora. At the bottom of the page, he has a bunch of stuff about potentially hazardous asteroids, which talks about, you know, the latest observations and sightings of asteroids, which can be interesting, especially when, you know, if you check it every day, all of a sudden you'll notice one that like came a tenth of a distance between here and the moon and is 10 meters across, and it only popped up the day you saw it. That's a little worrying sometimes. Anyhow, this is a great source of information about the sun, and you know, has the X-ray, the solar wind data, and the sunspot number. This is the Space Weather Prediction Center at Noaa, and this is their Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. So they have different dashboards for different businesses. There's a whole aviation dashboard, one for people who are all about satellites, you know, just to compile the information in a way that's of interest to you. And this was, you can see up here, was February 15th. And the X-ray flux really was off the scale low because we're in the middle of solar low. If you go there now, it's like hovering down here on the very bottom of the scale. But at that point in time, it really was off the scale low. And it has the this has the X-ray flux, protons, geomagnetic activity, and the forecast for the geomagnetic activity, which is probably about where our weather forecasting was, you know, 30, 40 years ago. They could maybe kind of tell you what it might do later today and maybe tomorrow, but the third day one is not so good usually. Nothing against them, it's just that the models don't exist and the information we're still learning. So I mentioned that at the bottom of this page, and this I just, you know, zoom this up because it would be too small to see on the screen. There's a whole bunch of stuff, including this products and data section. And so you can go directly to a number of different things. There are forecasts, reports, all kinds of things. And then down here, oh, here you can see the other dashboards listed. And right here, you can see data access. And so if you go there, this is what you get. You get this data service, and they offer data of different kinds of things in a number of different formats. JSON, which if you're not familiar with, is a sort of a shorthand JavaScript object notation, I believe is what it's called. There is some that's straight text. And so some data is available only in one format. Sometimes it's available in multiple formats. But anyhow, it's all there. So I was going to put together, I had seen articles in magazines and online about coding your own dashboard, you know, basically either for Windows or for Linux. And I thought that was a pretty cool idea, and you know, something that I could put together so that I could have all my information in one screen. But I'm old enough to remember when a dashboard had actual gauges with moving pointers and not virtual bar graphs. I'm sure some of you share that. The dashboard on your car was actually gauges with meters and pointers. And this is not as crazy an idea as you might think. I found some 1 milliamp panel meters on all electronics for $3.50 a piece in quantity of 8. So it's not super expensive or anything to do it this way. And I thought it would be fun. I thought it would be a good way to learn something about Linux and Python and the Raspberry Pi to do this. So here's a little side note about display power. I had, years and years ago, if any of you were at the first Owens Valley conference that we did, I had built an LED bar graph style display to do similar things. At the time, I was going to monitor several VLF stations on different bar graphs. And here's an interesting thing to think about is that if you have 6 bar graphs with 10 LEDs per bar and they're at full scale, you end up drawing 600 milliamps of power to display those 6 items. Whereas 6 of these 1 MA meters only draw 6 milliamps. So that's a factor of 100 different. And don't even talk about the power required to display on a monitor. So anyhow, the other thing is that some MCUs can't really drive an LCD directly, certainly not that many all at once, but pretty much any processor can drive a 1 milliamp meter. And in fact, if you search around, I'm sure you could find 100 microamp meters, so the numbers even get a little better. But if you use a 3.3 volt processor, which is really common right now in microprocessors, and with PWM outputs and a 3.3K ohm resistor, you get a 1 milliamp full scale. So that's pretty easy to hook up. Now, my first idea was to use an ARM processor eval board from Texas Instruments. It had enough PWM outputs and it had an Ethernet port. I'm a pretty experienced embedded microprocessor software guy and hardware guy, and so I thought that that would be a good way to go. But I got frustrated with the network access, the internet access support tools were not very good. So then, and that was, so I sort of hit a dead end with that. I didn't have enough time to really dig into it. So then I discovered the Pi Servo Hat from Adafruit. Hopefully those of you out there who are familiar with the Raspberry Pi and the Arduino know about Adafruit. They're a small company in New York who have all kinds of great little hardware widgets at very, very good prices. And I highly recommend you go there, adafruit.com. And the Pi Servo Hat, which is an interesting thing, which is, let me back up here. The Pi Servo Hat, they use it for controlling model RC car servo motors for, to do animations and things like that. So that, which is kind of cool. But it turns out they're just a PWM output. And so it has 16 PWM outputs from this board, which plugs onto the top of a Raspberry Pi. And that sort of woke up my idea. Oh, well, I knew that the Raspberry Pi had good, network support. So the Raspberry Pi, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it was developed in the UK originally to promote teaching of computer science in schools worldwide. And many millions of them have been sold since. I have a few of them in the office even right at the moment. There have been several versions since the original Raspberry Pi Model A was released in 2013. I bought for this project a Raspberry Pi 3 Model B, which at the time was one of the more recent ones. Basically has an ARM processor running at 1.2 gigahertz. It has a gigabyte of RAM, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, and USB ports. And then the code is actually on, the code is actually on a SD card, a little micro SD card. It's kind of shocking how much data there you can fit on a micro SD card. As a side note, I heard about this idea of being able to put one, if you can put all of Wikipedia onto a 128 gig SD card, which is not that expensive. I put all of Wikipedia on an SD card and then I have it in my phone. So even offline, I can access Wikipedia, which is great because I like to go camping. Anyhow, so here's a picture of a Raspberry Pi card. I can't remember. I think I got this picture off the Raspberry Pi site, but you can see here's the video interface. This is where you plug in speakers. This micro USB is intended for powering the device. There's stacks of full-size Type A USB cards, USB jacks over here, and this is the network jack. And then this spot here is where you plug on a hat, they call it. If you're familiar with the Arduino world, they would refer to it as a shield. So I don't know why they decided on hat. I guess, I don't know. Anyhow, they didn't want to call it a shield, I guess. And then as an aside, if you want to, you can hook a camera here, which is sort of an interesting idea. I have an idea for that. So as I mentioned, the Servo Hat, it plugs onto the top on that connector. You get 16 PWM outputs, tended to drive hobby or RC servos. It's based on the NXP PCA 9685 chip, which is really intended to drive LEDs at variable brightness. And in fact, I've designed this chip into a couple of different products I've worked on since I discovered it, because it's a pretty cool part. And the hat, all assembled circuit board, is $17.50 from Adafruit. So that was a pretty good deal. And this is what it looks like. Here's the guts of it, the chip that does all this, the magic. It has 16 PWM outputs, and they have quite a bit of flexibility about the speed and alignment of the pulses and a whole bunch of other things. And this thing, these 3-pin headers are set up to power, to match servo pinout. Now, there's a disclaimer that if you're going to run high power servos and all that, that you probably want to power them some other way than through the center pins here. But this is certainly, you know, an adequate way to do small servos. They do have, and they have, just also to support, they have this power input jack for your servo, so you can separate the Raspberry Pi's power from the servo power, which is probably a good idea. So here's how the design works. Here's my architecture, I guess you'd say. So I have the Raspberry Pi single board computer and the Adafruit Pi Servo Hat sitting on top of it. I designed a little circuit board based on an a AC/DC module to provide 5 volts for the Raspberry Pi and a 12 volt power for these indicators, and I'll come to that in a minute. The signals from the servo go to a custom perf board I built, and that has some stuff on it here I'll talk about a little bit, but basically that takes all those connections from the servo connectors and you know, splits them out into connectors for these meters, and also drives the indicators. So now I had to figure out what I wanted to display. I have room for 6 meters on the panel, so I had to kind of whittle it down to the things I really wanted to know. So here's what I have currently. I have the sunspot number, which is a linear scale from 0 to 250. And it's been at 0 a lot lately. Like today, I think it's reading about 20. The next one to it is solar flux units. If you're into ham radio and try to reach distant places through ionospheric propagation, then you might pay attention to this number. The SFUs tell you how much X-ray, it's what the radio flux is at 10 centimeters, which is about 3,800. Yeah, it's in the 3 gigahertz range. So the next one I put up was the K index. This is again something you might be aware of. It's the magnetic, how unsettled the magnetic field of the Earth is at the moment, and this is a 3-hour window that's the KP is calculated on. You also might be familiar with the A index, which is basically the K index, but for the whole day instead. They sort of give a rating for the whole day. The next one is the X-ray flux, which, as I mentioned in the earlier one, was 0 for a while, but it's near, you know, it's starting to come up off the peg as we get a few sunspots. And then the last two have to do with the solar wind. The solar wind speed, which is on a linear scale from 0 to 1,600 kilometers a second, which is pretty fast. and the density, which is from 0 to 60 particles per cubic centimeter, so which is not very dense. If you think about 60 electrons in a cubic centimeter, that's even at its highest density is like not many particles, but that's the way the solar wind works. Oh, I want to mention, so these are all linear scales with the exception of the X-ray flux, which is, of course, covers a wide range of covers wide range of magnitudes. So the meter scales, obviously they came with a meter scale which was 0 to 1 milliamp when I bought them. Some of the data, like the index or the K, sunspot number, K index for linear, X-ray flux, as I just mentioned, covers several orders of magnitude, is usually plotted logarithmically. So I searched around. I'd heard about this for a while back. It's a piece of software simply called Meter, and it's a meter scale drawing program from Ton Software. He actually also has some filter design software and things like that, which are inexpensive and very useful. I recommend you check out his site. It's quite good. So you can get the free basic version, or there's a full featured version for $50 to $5. I decided to spring for the extra money since I was going to do 6 meters and to help support him a little bit. So here's an example of a close-up of the X-ray flux meter. Now, even though I decided to do the logarithmic conversion in the software. So basically what I've done is it's linearly by magnitude, right? So this is 10 to the minus 8 watts per square meter, and this is 10 to the minus 2 watts per square meter. So when you get up to this range, that's a pretty intense X-rays. These are all, by the way, these scales are all based on the Noaa scales, which I pointed out on the space weather dashboard. I tried to align everything as much as I could with their scales, so it would all make sense. Let me just go back to that previous one here. One thing too is this meter drawing program is very nice in that basically you take a few measurements. These dots here are the mounting holes for the scale. There's usually a couple of small screws if you look at a meter. This point is the center of the meter pivot, where the arm on the meter pivots. And then you can choose these radii. You can have multiple scales per meter scale. So you could, you could have a couple of ranges, or you could, for instance, you might have, in this case, I use color, but you might have like, I think on the K index one also, there's there's different ways of stating that. And so you could have, you might have, a perfect example would be like, you might have degrees F and degrees C, So anyhow, it's quite flexible. You can put all this text on there. It's a great program. Little sales pitch there. So here's the tricky part. For the data sources. While I found all these data sources, each one of them is really unique. Some of them are plain text, some of them are JavaScript object notation. The formats are all different, even amongst the plain text and JSON. Not everything's available from the Space Weather Prediction Center. I tried to, as much as possible, find the actual primary data source, not the aggregated data. So in other words, spaceweather.com is great, but that's not a primary source. I actually hunted around and found like the official sunspot number data source and used that instead. The data is also uploaded at different rates by their sources. So as I mentioned, the K index is calculated every 3 hours at Noaa, and the A index only once per day. But the X-ray flux is once a minute. They get a data point from a satellite that gives the X-ray flux. So I had to figure out a way to sort of deal with all of that. And basically what I did was I don't check the K index just every 3 hours. I update it about every 15 minutes. And that makes it a little more robust for, network failures. You might go out and ask for the data and not get it right away, that sort of thing. So but the X-ray flux I do get once a minute. That's sort of the fastest thing that I go out and get. So now I had to go out and learn Python. I'm a pretty experienced C and assembly language programmer, but I have no experience with Python. So luckily there's plenty of online learning resources, tutorials and, how to get started sort of resources. And luckily the Servo Hat came with a demo program that I was able to use as a starting point, right? A simple example is a huge step to get you off the ground with something like this. And, I took a very one step at a time thing. I started with one simple data source. I looked at all the ones and said, okay, I think I can untangle this one pretty easily and put that one up on the meter. And then as I got each one working, I added more. And also what happened was, as I would run this for days at a time, different types of errors would arise in the data that I requested. So, I would add in things to filter out the errors or deal with them in a graceful way, rather than just having a crash back to Linux. So here's a photo of the sort of finished thing, and the space weather dashboard is this bottom one. The one above that is my SAM3 geomagnetic field monitor, which I bought from Whitreeve. It comes in a nice little plastic box, but it wasn't really working with my rack setup. You can see this is I went with rack width panels. So I repackaged it into this. And I used up one of the 8 meters I bought for the K-index output of that board. The K-index was not 8 when I took this picture. I had been working on the system and thought it was 8 at that moment in time. It settled down after it had been shut off for a while. So after it had been running for a while, I mean. And by the way, I was too cheap to buy a rack, so this is actually a rack-like object made out of 2x4s. So, but the spacing is great and it works good. The 2x4s will handle the screws from the shelf brackets and the front panels just fine. So here you can see sunspot number, the solar flux units, the K-index, the X-ray flux. I since then modified this a little bit to make it look a little nicer like that. The solar wind speed and the solar density. Now, one thing I'll mention, this is a power switch for the Raspberry Pi, which is hidden inside. Since I was going old school with the meters, I also went old school with the indicators, and these are actual 6-volt pilot lights inside those like jeweled, old style jeweled holders, so you can kind of get an idea of that on the green one. You can see the facet there lit up. And I just thought it went with the style. Certainly not practical because I had to add another power supply and add drivers that could turn these lamps on, so I had to add power transistors to turn those on. I couldn't hook them straight to the Raspberry Pi Servo Hat. Here's what the inside looks like, a top view. So you can see the backs of the meters and the wiring's all coming in here. And then these are the pilot lamps. And then this is the Raspberry Pi stack with the Raspberry Pi Hat on top. This is the perf board that I designed. I'll talk about that in a minute. And this is my line power supply module, which I bought. And basically it puts out, I want to say 9 volts, and then I regulate it down to 5 for the Pi. I think that's right. It might be 6. Anyhow, it's been a little while since I looked at it. And this object here, at the time, I did not have a monitor that would work with. The monitor I was trying to use for development didn't have HDMI. It was an old one that I had laying around. So this is like a HDMI to VGA adapter. I don't need to use that anymore, but that's what that was. And you can see the power cord coming out. And here's a close-up of the perf board. And basically what I did, the meters aren't perfect. They're plus or minus several percent, I think. And so they needed calibration. And so what I did was, rather than using a 3.3 K ohm resistor, I used a 3K resistor and a small pot. I think it's a 1K trimmer, to allow me to adjust the full scale on each one. Obviously, you start by adjusting that one, adjust this screw for the 0. Those of you who are familiar with analog meters, you adjust the 0 and then adjust these pots for full scale. And I had a test routine built in there to do that. And then these are the transistors here that drive the 3 lamps. Pretty simple. I think I bought that perf board thing from Adafruit too when I bought everything else. So results. I'm really happy with the performance. The Raspberry Pi runs for weeks at a time without trouble. And it's nice, it's nice to be able to just look over at the meters. I can literally lean back and see the meters and see what's going on. It's really great. It's fun. I don't have to click on anything on the screen. I don't have to interrupt whatever I'm doing on the computer. I can just go look at it. The only problem I have, and this hasn't happened in a while, I've mitigated most of the bad data issues, but the Pi runs for weeks without problems. The only time it really shuts down is for power failures anymore, and then I have to restart it, get everything going again. I have not made it auto restart yet, which I certainly could do to run my application to drive the meters. At this point, I have it running to a KVM switch so that I can switch over and talk to the Pi through the keyboard and the screen. And at this point, I'm still debugging, so I want to know what happened, what caused it to stop. And so I haven't gone to an auto startup setup. So here's some links to it. I will say that I think for one of my next steps is I want to go deeper into the Python, and I want to do a visual dashboard on the screen of the Raspberry Pi, more as a educational experience than anything else. The Raspberry Pi has tons of capability, and I'm sure that I could make that happen in Python, and I know other people have done it. So I'm leaving that as my next learning experience with the Raspberry Pi and this object. Here's a few links. Excuse me. Spaceweather.com, the Space Weather Prediction Center. Oh, here's something I will say. I think that this link might be wrong now. Space Weather Prediction just changed their maps on their websites. Don't you hate it when they do that? You have a bookmark set and they go and change how they've structured the website. There's no difference in anything that you can see, but they change the addresses. And that's a continuing, I haven't had that problem much with the data, but I have had at least one instance where the source I'm using for data went away and I had to go find it again. Okay, so before I move on to Super Sid, are there any questions about the what I just showed you so far? I'm having trouble seeing my chat window. Where is that gone?
I got one from Elena. Good free place for Start Python is Coursera Python for Everyone, presented by University of Michigan.
Yep.
I don't see any specific questions yet on the chat.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that, if you have data that you like to look at a lot, might think about doing something. You don't have to do it with meters, but definitely the idea of building your own dashboard is a great way to, learn Python and maybe learn a little bit more about your computer if you want to.
I do got a couple questions coming in. Mike Ott, are you screen scraping or accessing a database?
I'm accessing a database. Generally, the text I'm getting for is all either in text or JSON. I'm not trying to pull the data out of an HTML website. That changes even more frequently than the lower level data.
Okay. John McCullough, how much did all that cost?
Oh, it wasn't much. I think the Raspberry Pi was $30. The Pi Hat was was under 20. I'm going to say I had the meter, I had the panel, the meters and everything. It had to have been under $100, I think, to put that all together.
All right. Okay, I think that's all the questions for this section.
Okay, let me just buzz on through and do the last part of this and talk about Super Sid. As Rich mentioned, for the last 5 years, Melinda and Bill were excellent salespeople, and they convinced me to take over the handling of Super Sid. They have been testing and building and shipping those devices, and Linda put together an excellent manual, which I still have. I don't know if y'all can see my picture too, but anyhow, she put together a whole notebook of how to do it, which I've just refined since. And it has been a great, a fun thing to do. Not without its frustrations, of course, but basically we buy, let me just talk about this for a minute. So let me back up just a skosh. What is Super Sid? So SID, SID is a sudden ionospheric disturbance, generally caused by solar flares, although there are a few other things which might cause SIDs. The tactic is to monitor VLF government transmitters around 25 kilohertz. The United States has several in that region scattered across the country. There are other countries have other ones as well. You all may be familiar with WWVB, which is the time source at 60 kilohertz, while other countries have time broadcasts at lower frequencies, which you can pick up this way. A Super Sid is a loop antenna. We don't provide the antenna itself, but we provide a kit if you want to build one, basically the wire and cable. A preamp, which is a single op amp design inside of a small round tin. And then the software, which allows you to use a high-def sound card. You have to be able to sample, in the US at least, you have to be able to sample at 96 kilohertz to pick up the 25 and 26 kilohertz signals. And then it does two things. One is it presents a live picture of the signal that's coming in as a spectrum. So if you see the 0 to 48 kilohertz spectrum displayed on your screen. And then you can designate certain signals as ones you want to track long-term. So it will track the amplitude of a given transmitter, and then every day it will save a data file, and if you want to, upload the data file to the database which exists at Stanford. The system was originally designed by the Stanford Solar Center. Debbie Shearer and her team there, who were part of the outreach and education group at Stanford. They originally had a single channel, very expensive SID receiver. They were like thousands of dollars, and they were hard to manufacture. Then they came up with the idea of this idea, using a high-def sound card and a simple preamp, and that has turned into a great thing. They were able to originally do it using students, I believe, manufacture these things and ship them to educational institutions all around the world. And then they got together with SARA probably, well, I want to say around 2013 or so. And we took over the manufacturing and distribution of it. We got some money from Stanford to support that. And then, as I said, Bill and Melinda Lord did that originally. And then my wife and I took it over eventually. It's pretty simple. There's a circuit board in there, which we have made about 100 at a time. And then all the other stuff is, simple wires and cables. So I have to prep some cables and drill a few holes in the tin and then mount it up, test it, and package it. And my wife handles most of the shipping. And it goes pretty well. Occasionally we get, how this thing, any of you who work in retail, you know that predicting when demand will spike and when it won't is really hard. So occasionally we get caught with a big wave, but otherwise it works out pretty well. So the grand total is something over 900 units. I didn't count them all, but and that includes an early version where we had an external power supply. 5 or 6 years ago, we switched over to using USB power. So that's how the preamp is powered. Last year, we shipped a total of 53 units. That included one large shipment of 20 that went to Nigeria. And that was basically a foundation that wanted to distribute a lot of them to schools in Nigeria. So they arranged to take delivery in the United States, and then they worried about getting them into Nigeria. So anyhow, you know, if you subtract that out, then it was 33 units or something last year.
Hey Keith.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, my understanding is the Dragon is splashed down.
Hey, all right.
Then on top of that, you got 2 more minutes.
Okay, I'm almost done. This is the.
I've got it on the screen, and yes, it's down.
All right. Okay, so this year so far we've shipped 14 total. A little lower than normal, I'm sure, because of COVID. Most of those went to the USA.
You didn't mention the one that was sent to Argentina recently too.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's right. That one, yes, right. So far we've had 14. I think the mailing address on that one might have been in the United States, wasn't it, Dave? Anyhow, and then a couple to Canada, and then across the world. Not so much to Africa or Asia recently, although historically we have. Now, some of that is partly because of postage, I think. We were shipping a lot to India, but at the moment they put a really intense import duty on anything going in from the United States, even on donations. Even if you say it's a gift, they still charge the destination, the recipient, a big import duty. And there's really no way for us, even on a grant, we would ship the thing for free to them, but there's no really good way for us to pay for that duty to help them. So we've struggled with that some. Some countries, and including Nigeria that I mentioned earlier, have very poor delivery rates. About half the devices mailed to Nigeria are returned or never delivered. Now that group of 20 went to a US address and then were hand carried to Nigeria. That's about the only way to make it work. There has been sort of a slow, steady decrease in demand, especially in the last few years. Debbie Shearer retired. They lost funding for the outreach group at Stanford. And she was a very energetic champion for Super Sid. She traveled the world, selling this idea to folks. And unfortunately, like I say, that funding went away. So she's not traveling and she's not selling them around the world. And that's sort of one of the worries I think we have is that at some point, right now, the database is hosted by Stanford and the primary Super Sid website is hosted by Stanford. And I'm worried that at some point they will lose that thread and we might lose access to that. But so far so good. And we keep checking and they say, yes, we're going to support it. So we're good. And it's still continuing an active program. A lot of people are submitting data to the database. So that's the quick Super Sid update. And if you have any questions or comments, anything like that, just email me at that address and I will respond as best I can. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Keith. Excellent. And I highly recommend that if you're just getting involved in radio astronomy. That was my first radio astronomy receiver, and I consider it my best one because it's 24 hours a day, and I was able to actually view the eclipse with it, and that's how good it is. Okay, Raffle time, and then people can start taking breaks. We're running a little bit late, but we'll try to pick it back up at 1500. But the raffle winners are Max, Von, Piper. Are you online? So Max, are you there? Okay, I don't hear anything. Tom Jacobs, are you online?
Yes, I'm here, but I won that yesterday.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Well, you can't. Wait, what'd you win yesterday? Oh, you did. Never mind.
Took the membership. I took a membership.
My radio, so much for my Excel random number generator. Yeah. Stand by. I'm going to get two more here. Let's see, number 56. Okay, number 56. Bogdan, are you online? Nope. Okay. Let's see. I'm batting 1,000 here. 61. Charles Hill. Charles Hill. This is like bingo. Wait.
They're all probably watching the SpaceX.
Yeah. They'd rather do space than radio, science. I guess that's their loss here. Let's see. Next one. Carl Leister. All right. I'm still going. John Colt.
Which one?
Uh-oh. Let's see. Well, that's a good question. Oh, no, this is not junior. This is senior.
All right. Junior is actually me. How about a T-shirt?
Okay, well, let's see what the options here. Okay, a T-shirt.
Loud.
All right.
Which email address are we looking at?
Oh, that's a better question. Do you know?
Well, I've got, it's number 68, Dennis. Number 68's the winner, so that's.
So that's JZ Colt at My Fair Point.
So they're starting
that's
to
right,
move
that's
in.
me.
Right.
Kate just said that first boat's going to go in, sniff
So
around the
we've
capsule.
only got small,
for
medium, and large?
traces of hyperdolls. The second one's going to start rounding up the parachutes, which we're getting some really cool views.
Somebody's going to have to shut their mic off.
Looking down, you can see the parachutes in the water.
Can you mute everybody?
Yep, that's my.
So the largest shirt size is a large?
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I'll take a membership instead.
Okay.
Okay.
The My Fair Point?
That'll work, yes.
Got it.
Okay. All right. One more
Thanks.
here. Number 65, which is Ater Dworak. Did I pronounce that right? Or Artur Dworak, D-W-O-R-A-K. Okay, wow.
He
Dennis.
doesn't appear to be signed in.
Okay, I got another one here is Wendy Waters. I saw her come in. Wendy.
Yesterday?
Hello?
Oh, wait. I'm sorry.
Hello?
Wendy, are you there?
I'm here, but I got a book yesterday.
There, you know, I'm going to call Excel and say their random number generator isn't very random here. Okay, one last one. Let's see. Ray Uberecken, I know you're online. Ray Uberecken. Oh,
I'm here.
okay.
Finally had to-
You won something.
I will do a T-shirt, blue, I guess, in large.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be in touch with you on email to confirm everything.
Okay, thank you, Dennis.
All right. Well, I didn't think it'd take that long to get through that, but all right. Okay, got a few more minutes for you guys to take your breaks, and then we'll. The next speaker is Whittam Reeve, important celestial radio sources. So you can queue up now, Whittam, and we're about
Why
there.
don't you unshare and I'll go ahead and go online.
Absolutely. Just one second here. Okay.
Hold on, Richard needs to do something. Look at your stop and start recording so we break this up.
Got it.
You want me to unshare?
No, you're fine.